Welcome to Rewind Reviews, home of the Rewind Reviews. Can we take your order?
I'll have a podcast based on a nostalgic movie of our childhood, Dan.
Coming right up, Chris. Don't know how long I can keep that up. Yes, hello everyone. Welcome, of course, to Rewind Reviews. Dan, as always, joined by Chris. Say hi, Chris.
Hi, Chris.
There you go. That's a very Good Burger-esque joke. See what we did?
Yes. Yeah,
we
very
did.
much so. Oh, man.
So, yeah, for those of you just jumping on, this is our podcast Rewind Reviews, where we review an old movie that is of some nostalgia to us. Doesn't necessarily have to be very old, but usually it's a movie from our past that we have some nostalgia for. Occasionally we step outside of that to experiment, to discover if other films that we're not nostalgic for hold up or whatever. But that is generally the premise. This week, we go back and forth choosing the movies. This week, Chris chose Good Burger, a movie, a big part of his past, big part of his childhood. Should we jump right in with that, Chris? Because
yeah, I mean,
this is a big one for you. Is there a story?
This is the one, really, isn't it? This is the movie that we've teased. It's taken 5 years to get here, but this is the movie that is quite synonymous with me to my friends. I have a poster of it up in my office. A poster which cost me £90.
It's massive as well.
Yeah. I'm very proud of it. I love it. Yes. So I was a huge Kenan and Kel fan. Kenan and Kel was absolutely one of those shows. One of those shows that takes over you. Absolutely adored it. God, do you remember kids, the wait between season 2 and season 3 of Kenan and Kel? Crazy times. And I don't know if season 3 and 4 ever made it to terrestrial in the UK. Like, it was, you had to get Nickelodeon. It was wild. Anyway, but I think Nickelodeon was like a free channel on Sky back in the day. Like, this was before Sky, I think, did everything in packages, and I think Nickelodeon came with it, unlike the Disney Channel, which you had to pay for. I mean, I've gone off piste. Anyway, huge fan of Kenan and Kel. So the movie's coming out. I'm obviously hyped. I'm excited. I don't really understand what it is because one important thing of note, I think, for the UK is that we didn't have all that. So some of the context of Good Burger is absolutely lost on us. Like, to my head, it's just like it's a Kenan and Kel movie. It's being very much promoted as like a Kenan and Kel movie. The words Kenan and Kel are all over the poster. It's got the two actors in, but it's clear that they're playing, Dexter and Ed, but two, let's say, Kenan and Kel-like characters,
yes.
Even borrowing a lot of the mannerisms and, the kind of the why and the da-da-da, all that sort of stuff. But so the movie comes out, and I'm pumped and I'm excited, and I'm at an age. Well, I don't know if you've got this to hand, but I was trying to. I thought of this before we went. What age? I mean, let's assume it's 90. The movie comes out in 97, so let's assume it's 98, 97, 98 for UK release. So I'm 8, 9 years old, I think. Assuming it comes out. Well, maximum it would be 98, wouldn't it? So yeah, I'm 9 years old. So obviously I've got to go to the cinema. I've got to convince my parents to go. So I'm like, Mum, Dad, let's want to see this film. They knew it was coming. They knew I wanted to see it. And so the first week goes by, and this was back in the day, folks, where in order to get, do you remember this, Dan? Like, you had to go to a fucking newspaper, and flick to the cinema listings. So I'm like, right, it's on, let's go. And we can't go the first week, whatever, it's fine. We'll catch it the second week. I'm like, okay. And I don't know for sure whether this incident that I'm about to talk about took place the second week, the third week, I don't know. But we get the paper, and I'm like, right, we're going. We got to go. And they're like, no, we're busy for these reasons for this week. Can't remember why we couldn't go. And I'm like, but it's going to go out the cinema. And they're like, it's only been like a couple of weeks. Of course, it's not going to go out the cinema. And I'm looking at the times, and even as a 9-year-old with not much awareness for this type of thing, I'm spotting that the showings of Good Burger have gone down quite dramatically within a week. And I've got my suspicions that this film isn't necessarily going to hang around and, be Titanic, which my mum and dad seem to think it's going to be. So I'm like, I think we need to go now. They're like, no, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. You know what it was, Dan? It was them telling me that Power Rangers Live wasn't showing at 5 o'clock in the morning, even though it actually was showing at 5 o'clock in the morning. It was that all over again.
Oh no.
And I was adamant. I was convinced. I was like, I don't think it will be. Next week, cinema listings come out. No Good Burger. Good Burger's not showing anymore. I've missed my opportunity to see Good Burger
That's heartbreaking.
at the cinema. So I bawl my eyes out. I cry like you've never seen a 9-year-old cry. And, Mum and Dad are trying to comfort me. And you could tell they felt bad. And look, my Mum and Dad are wonderful people. They were wonderful parents. They still to this day couldn't do enough for us. But undeniably on this one, they let me down. I think that's categorical. It's the reason.
I'll speak from experience when I say this, Chris. The average person has no idea that films in the cinema don't have a set amount of time. The amount of people that I've spoken
joking,
to
of course.
in my life. I know you're joking, but I just want to add this because I think this is important. The amount of people, Chris, I've spoken to in my lifetime that think that films come out for a set period of time that's predetermined is quite frankly alarming. It'll be out for about 4 weeks then, yeah?
Yeah. That a film's out for, regardless of success or whatever, a film is out for a month or whatever. Yeah.
It has a window. No. Film do badly, film go bye-bye. Film do well, film stay forever.
And I do literally think it was like 2 weeks and it was done.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, Chris. Carry on.
And they felt really guilty.
So to your parents' credit, they probably did think it had like a 4-week window of release.
Well, especially because their son was so incredibly hyped for it, and they might have just assumed that, all children were. Yeah. So I'm devastated. I'm crying, and they're consoling me, and it's like, don't worry, we'll look and see if it's on any other cinemas, which they did, and it wasn't. And then it was like, well, maybe it will come our local. Sort of, I guess it's not really. Yeah, no, I guess theatre venue. It's like I don't know, 500, 1,000 seats maybe or something. And it's like if Ramesh Ranganathan, Lee Evans, Jack D, if they're doing work in progress shows, they'll come to it. So it's not theatre as in like local Amdram. It's it's where the pantomime is held, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, they have a cinema which they will sometimes take the bigger movies a couple of weeks later and show them in that. They're like, maybe it'll be on there. Obviously, it wasn't. So we then started the 9-month journey of basically from that point onwards. After only about a month, every time I went into WH Smith's with my mum and dad, I would take us to the back, to the video counter, and ask if they knew when Good Burger was coming out, right? And the woman got to know me. The woman who worked there began to recognize me. I would walk up, she'd get a book, she'd flick through it, she'd be like, yeah, it's not listed, sorry. Mum and Dad also subscribed at the time to what in reflection is quite an advanced service in a way. It was postal video rental. So basically, they got a booklet through the post every month with loads of video titles and images, and they could you selected which you wanted to rent, and the video came in and you rented it. It almost a modern pre. Whatever, a 90s Netflix to some degree. So they're going, right, we'll keep an eye on this as well. And I'm going, but if it comes out on that, we've got to wait for it to come in the post. We've got to wait for the book to line up. It's going to be better to go and buy it or rent it. And they're like, yeah, I guess, he's taking this seriously. And I'm like, yeah, I'm taking it seriously. Thanks to you, I missed it in the cinemas, didn't I? And then, or, a version of that. And then, so that happens for about 9 months, and eventually, Dan.
Sorry, Chris. I was just trying to look up how long its UK run was at the cinemas, Chris. I know you're mid-flow, and I didn't want to interrupt, but it was released in the UK cinemas, Chris, on February 13th, 1998, where it only reached 14th in the charts, which means, Chris, I'm not even sure it went to week 2.
Right, and this is the thing, because that makes sense, because in my head, and I didn't say this because I didn't know the details, and this is going to make my parents sound even better and me sound like a monster for making jokes. That's around my sister's birthday, and I'm pretty sure that the reason we couldn't go first off is because we were doing something for my sister's birthday, so that was sort of taking the priority.
It made so little. It made so little money, Chris, in the UK box office, which I think looks like it was the only other country they released it in, other than the States, that it's not even registered on Box Office Mojo how much money it made. And let me tell you now, Chris. We did a movie recently where we looked it up, and it was like £6,000 was all it made in the UK. I can't remember which film, but it made like nothing in the UK.
Yeah.
Opening 14th. Opening 14th. The only reason a cinema would keep that film around is if they had 15 screens, Chris.
Yeah, no, I know. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And like I say...
Because that means 13 movies were performing better than it.
They promoted it quite heavily, and I was talking about it all the time. I can't stress enough. I completely get why my mum and dad thought.
This wasn't even about that. I was just like, I'm not even sure it went a second week. That's why.
Yeah. So who knows? Who knows what was happening? But yeah. So, maybe it was only 1 week then, and this instance took place the second week. That sounds like that could be right. Which would also, tie up to my sister's birthday. But yeah, it was crazy times.
So you were waiting for the VHS to come out. You didn't want to do it through the magazine. All you wanted was to go rent it so you could have it day one because you're a sad little Good Burger nerd.
To clarify, for the younger people listening to a podcast about Good Burger, this was back in the day when movies came out to rent first, and then, like, what was it, a couple of weeks later, a month later maybe, or something? I don't know, they came out to buy. So when I say rent, if anyone's thinking, why didn't he want to buy it? I did want to buy it, but at the time, the only option. So
the video store industry was very much like the cinema industry, and it was like, I think it was something like three to 5 months to hit video, and then another 6 months or something to hit purchase, maybe 3 to 6 months to hit purchase, and then even then, it wouldn't go on TV for another 12 months after that. That was the process.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I remember one Christmas, like the BBC very cleverly, like the year Toy Story came out and was huge. The BBC cleverly scheduled something that was called like The Toy Story or something, and I don't know what I think it was a short or something like that, and it might have even been like a Pixar short. And I remember everyone's hype being like, "Oh my god, Toy Story's going to be on Christmas," and I was like, "It's clearly not. Like, it's just left the cinema, people. Like, But I guess we were nerds with an awareness of stuff like that. But anyway, so the movie comes out. Glorious day, Dan. It's available to rent from Blockbuster. I march us down there, or I happen to be in town and insist. I can't remember what. Point is, we rent Good Burger. I watch Good Burger a lot. Like, a lot that weekend. Like, I remember, I have vivid memories of my mum and dad coming in and my dad just being like, "You watching this movie again?" I made them watch it. Then we obviously give that rental back. Next weekend, I rent it again. And it basically, I got it from the mail, the mail order thing. They're like, "But we've seen it." I'm like, "Yeah, but this is renting it from a different source. So let's do that." And I'm like, all right, fine. So we get it from the mail order, and eventually it comes out on video, and I get it. I feel like it was a Christmas present actually. It's got for me purchased for me as a Christmas present on VHS.
That tracks because it would have been just under 12 months later. Obviously, if it was February, it came out.
Yeah.
That's about the time it would take for it to hit VHS to purchase.
By the following Christmas. Yeah,
that would be my assumption.
So I get the movie and I continue to just watch it, and it is as we discussed, as I hinted at last week, like Dan with Aladdin. This was a movie where I could have recited the entire thing for you, line for line, and just gone through the entire thing. I absolutely adored this movie. I can't deny some of it, I think, was the emotion of not being able to see it. That played a factor into my sheer love for it. But I was a huge Kenan and Kel fan, and we will talk about the movie and review it in a second. But Dan, what's your history with the movie? And also, if you could then take us into, because we start with overall thoughts and, maybe even sometimes slip in recommend. There's been a big thing for those listening for the first time, and for those that aren't will be excited. All out bangers was the goal for the last 4 episodes, because we've done movies of varying quality at the start of this year, and we're coming off of the back of the last couple of Harry Potter movies and Fantastic Beasts movies, which aren't great. So the mission statement was all out bangers for these last 4. We did Aladdin. What did we do?
We did Aladdin. We did Mask of the Phantasm. We did Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Which were all fantastic,
all bangers. Because
not conventional choices, but bangers, to no doubt. Like they've all been really good. So there's a lot to live up to. Good Burger needs to make it 4 out of 4. And if you're wondering was it so important you guys did bangers till the end of the year? Well, we did Hook and then Crazy Stupid Love. Hook didn't live up to my childhood memories, and Crazy Stupid Love is a piece of shit. So.
Yeah, it didn't live up to my YA memories. And just movies that we thought were great, and then discovered they weren't. But we did start with Cool Runnings, which is a banger. Now, so Dan, I'll be honest with you. I'm very blinded by nostalgia with this movie. So yes. What I want to do is I want to get your memories of this movie and then your view on whether it holds up. Over to you, Daniel.
Yeah. In terms of first of all, I think your story is amazing. I love I've heard that story before, and I never get bored of it. There's just something so painfully reminding me of my childhood, like that passion, that inexplicable, unabashed passion for a thing that your parents just baffled by. Like I didn't have it with Good Burger the way you did, but there were so many things I felt that way about and just could not get them to understand. Like when I made them buy a bunch of blank VHSs because I was going to record, they were going to air all of Dragon Ball across one day, and I was like, they're going to air all of the Dragon Ball series, the first series. I want to see it. I can have it all on VHS if I just have 6 VHSs. Because it took a whole day to air it all. I was like, so I need 6 VHSs, or at least 3, because I think I can just about squeeze it in if I have them on long play. Like, it was that sort of situation. So, and just the confusion, the lack of understanding. I totally relate to that. So yeah, it always hits me. Go on, sorry.
We had 2 video players, and some shit like Only Fools and Horses, and I remember it vividly with Only Fools and Horses when it came back, and the Office finale. Just both videotapes recording. My parents just being like, "Why the fuck?" And me being like, "Because I need backups. I need a backup of it. I need to make sure I've got it." Like recording it twice, one on long play, one on short play. Ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's stories like that where I very much understand how we became friends.
Yes,
we had a very similar childhood in that sense, and that passion for stuff just doesn't go away. So yeah, very, very good. My story with this film is simply not believing it existed.
Oh my god, there's another. I'm so sorry. There's another element.
Oh, go on.
You remember every I won't name them, but I know his name, and I've brought this up with him since, and he denies it. Every year had the bullshitter. Every year had the kid that would just pathologically lie.
Yes.
My parents took us to do this. We did this.
My year had about 3 of them, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, so there was a kid who wasn't particularly well known. He wasn't like, to my memory anyway, he wasn't particularly like cock of the walk or like a really cool kid. Cock of the walk. Why did I use that phrase? But he wasn't like the cool kid. But for the people that know him, he was that, and he was that with me. He would always like bullshit about what he'd been up to or what he did. So I naturally, because I'm talking to everyone about my love of Good Burger and my disdain for not getting it, and he claims after like a week of it being in the cinema that he's got a copy on video. He says that his dad went to America and came back with a copy of Good Burger, and he has it. So I'm like, well, can I borrow that? I'm obsessed. I'm like, can I borrow that? Can I check that out? And he's like, oh yeah. Next day, have you got the Good Burger VHS? Oh no, I forgot. Carries on like this. I start turning up at the dude's house. I'm like, oh hey, nice to see you. Have you got that copy of Good Burger? Oh no, we've lent it to someone else at the moment. Sorry. Like just all the excuses under the sun. I'm asking his brothers. I'm like, hey, has he got Good Burger? And they're like, what the fuck? What's Good Burger? What are you talking about? And I'm just, it took me months to see the truth, but eventually I'm like, I reckon he's bullshitting and doesn't have a copy of Good Burger. Like, just banging on about it. And I even think to the point where ages later, when it actually comes out, he's like, oh, you want that Good Burger video? And I'm like, I've got it now. Like, what are you talking about? And I genuinely think, if memory serves, that lie made me drift apart from him. Because I was like, he hasn't got Good Burger. Like,
That's
crazy.
amazing.
Crazy.
That's
Anyway,
absolutely amazing, but I love that. That's very good.
But what a weird thing to do. What benefit of that? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, yes. I'm not gonna. That's such a strange thing to do. Well, is it? I guess I turned up at his house, and then presumably, like, I'm not a twat. Like, I'd have turned up, but you know what I mean? He'd have been like, "Do you want to hang out?" And I'd have been
Chris,
like, "I might be able to get my hands on that Good Burger VHS. I better go round."
Before you go down that rabbit hole, when he told the lie, he couldn't have possibly predicted you'd be insane enough to show up at his house for the video.
Well, yeah, that's true.
He wasn't like, right, my elaborate plan is lie about having Good Burger on VHS, refuse to bring it into school, and then Chris will have to come to me. I feel like that's 2 steps too many for any thought pattern of a child. But anyway, that's incredible.
He also told me that his mum was allergic to water, which I don't think is true either.
I love that we're 22 minutes into this, Chris. We haven't reviewed the movie yet. I'm becoming conscious of this now.
Go on.
But wait. The reason I bring that up is because I'm about to derail. Is I need to know what was allergic to water. What did you claim happened when she drank or came into contact with water? How does she clean?
That she had an allergic reaction. But do you want to know the best bit about that?
Yeah.
She worked in a kitchen. There's no way. There's no way you could be allergic to water and work in a kitchen where you have to, wash up or pour it or whatever. Yeah, no. And I think I remember being like, but how does she drink? And him being like, oh, she drinks other stuff. Which, on reflection, what does that mean? So, yeah, no. Crazy.
That's hilarious.
I assume maybe you can be allergic to water. No, you probably can't be, can you? I don't know.
We'll got to Google for another time, I feel. So, my history of the film is myth and legend. So it was not known as Good Burger. It was the Keenan and Kel film, and it sort of became word of the playground, as it were, that this film existed and had been made and had some sort of release, but no one knew where it was, couldn't find it. Like you. Attempting to check the cinema listings did not yield results because presumably by the time I heard about it, it was gone. We didn't have Sky and therefore access to things like Nickelodeon for a long, long time in my house because we were very poor. So I hadn't seen any promotion for the film. I just literally heard friends talk about it. And it was promoted to me as a Keenan and Kel film. That's how it was, but not by the studio, by friends. It was the Keenan and Kel film. And when I finally remember spotting it in a VHS, like in a rental place, I was very excited, and that's how I first saw the film. And I was like, "Oh, it exists! It's the real Keenan. It's the Keenan and Kel film is here." I don't know why they're working in a burger joint in this one, but it's the Keenan and Kel film. So we rented, and initial disappointment to discover that they weren't playing Keenan and Kel. But as you already hinted, they're very much playing Keenan and Kel, even if not by name. The characters are very similar to their counterparts from the TV show, and I obviously loved it as a kid. I thought it was really funny, really enjoyed it. In my head canon was that it really was Keenan and Kel because I didn't like that it wasn't. I was very stuck on it.
Bumped up against
that bothered me. So I always liked to think that it was how they met, maybe, but that doesn't make any sense with the story from the show.
And that's a big difference between the UK and the US not having all that, because obviously all that would give the context for the US kids. But I, like Dan, was fucking confused as to why that decision was made. And actually, my conclusion wasn't... I didn't kind of try and retcon it. My conclusion was, oh, well, I guess the story needs to have them meet, and they can't be Keenan and Kel because they've already met as Keenan and Kel, so they're sort of similar. But yeah, carry on.
Yeah, I tried to make sense of it and probably went mad attempting that. So yeah, big fan. Thought it was, thought it was great. And then I remember, I think it was like college, uni, sometime around then. I watched it again, and considering myself to be an adult, was like, oh, I wonder if this holds up. And I remember watching it and thinking it was amazing, but never watching it since because I was terrified that I'd actually grow up because I was still reasonably young when I saw that. That most recent time I've seen it, and ever since. And the reason it's taken us this many years to get to this film on this podcast, I think, is because I think secretly both Chris and I were terrified that this movie would be a piece of shit.
Yeah, that's absolutely
and I think more so even for Chris than me, as it seems to be a part of his like identity, and that other people think of the film in relation to him, not through his own choices, but just through like how it's been perceived. That's a lot of pressure to put on a movie of this nature, which is always going to be campy nonsense. So loved it originally. Sat down last night to watch it again. That fear, that concern. But I fucking loved it. I had a really good time. I don't think it's a great movie, and when I'm gonna give. I'll get this out the way now. My recommendation is coming with a lot of caveats. I don't think this is a movie. This is necessarily going to be a movie for just like any old adult to just stick on. But I do think if you have any nostalgia whatsoever, not just for Kenan and Kel, but for anything from that Nickelodeon era, whether it be like all that or even spreading out to some of the other stuff Nickelodeon was doing in the years after this, so stuff like the Amanda Show. And if you have nostalgia, this is the only live action Nickelodeon thing that got a movie. Right, animated things have been converted into movies, but this is the only thing Nickelodeon made that was live action that's ever gotten a movie, and it has to be seen to be believed for a few reasons. But I think watching it again, what I was looking out for is there a story of any kind worth telling here? Do the jokes still make me laugh? Do the characters go on a sensible, functional journey? I don't need it to be complex. It's not for that. James Cameron wants to tell us Avatar is his Magnus Opus or whatever, and I go and look at it and I just think it's the shallowest, flattest thing. That's a valid criticism. Anyone coming at me after seeing Good Burger and telling me, well, it didn't have a very in-depth character arc, can go fuck themselves, because quite frankly, it's not what the movie is about. It's a vehicle for jokes, right? So the story has to work. Absolutely. It can't not have a story, and it has to have a character arc, particularly for Dexter, that works. Those things are important. And it has to have a plot that functions too. That A to B, you understand what's happening in each of the scenes. Not only that, but each scene is thrusting the story forward into the next one. It's not just a series of events. It's not just a series of sketches set in this burger place. Because that is the bad version of this movie. Plotless, directionless, basically Clerks. That's the bad version of this movie. The version we got, look, the jokes are very slapstick. Many of them will not work for an adult. But I found myself laughing multiple times across this film, more than I was expecting to. I laughed almost immediately, actually. Very pleasant surprise. I'm going to say the joke. We won't do the thing where we just list a bunch of jokes from the movie, but I'll say this. I laughed very quickly and was like, oh, this is a good sign. It's when this alarm clock is going off, and he like hits the alarm clock to turn it off, looks at it and goes, whoa, a clock!
This is the thing, right? Cause,
yeah.
Sorry, go on. Well, just to pivot, just to bolt on about the jokes. I think that's another caveat for recommendation. If you like jokes, if, for example, Tim Vine really entertains you, just that real rapid fire joke telling, there are a fuck ton of jokes in this movie. That's one thing, reviewing it from a critical angle, or trying to review it from a critical angle and not let nostalgia and all of that stuff impact it too much. One thing I was really taken by was how thick and fast the jokes are in this movie, and how a lot of them still land. A lot of them feel almost quite modern. Maybe not modern, but certainly more modern than 1997, which is when this movie was made. There's jokes in here that you could expect to find in a 2010s sitcom, and just I think so. If slapstick humor, if kind of real, just sort of jokes are your thing, I think that's another way you could you could sit down and enjoy this movie.
Yeah, and I think it's tricky with the jokes though, because I think arguably one of the criticisms a person could levy at it wasn't a problem for me, but if someone told me this, I'd be like, yeah, that's fair. Is there are a lot of them and not all of them land, so it sometimes feels like they're just throwing shit at the wall till some of it sticks. You know, it's just joke. This one? No? This one? How about this one? Like, that can be kind of exhausting, I think. And I think
that's fair.
And I think somebody not in the right frame of mind, or just not that way inclined, would find that to be a negative rather than a plus. I think I personally enjoyed it because it meant that like I laughed very regularly throughout the movie. There are stretches when the jokes, I prefer the verbal ones. Personally, when I was watching the movie, I would enjoy all the jokes that came from sort of like the dialogue. I was less fond of like the visual or the slapsticky stuff. So like Ed in the milkshake machine was just upsetting to me now as an adult. Not funny as it was to me as a child, but I think maybe that's one of the reasons this movie does work now, because you know, I'm sure as a kid I was laughing at all the slapstick stuff, and now as an adult maybe I'm laughing some of the verbal stuff. I don't know.
I definitely agree with that on the verbal, and that milkshake thing is because there is a point where, you know, because I gotta throw some critiques obviously, and there is a point at the beginning where I think it does look, and there is a concern that the film is going to do what you described, which is be a series of sketches. Because kind of at the beginning, in some ways it is. Like, it's kind of like we have the Dexter stuff, which plays out like a story, but the Good Burger stuff is more sketch-like at that point. It's dealing with customers, it's Ed in the milkshake machine, it's, you know, him getting to work and that and all that stuff, and it really starts to come together when the plot of Good Burger v Mondo Burger and Dexter and Ed's relationship starts to come to the focus, and then everything comes together more. But I think there is a portion of this movie at the beginning where I'm watching it going, this is more sketch-based than I remember. And then that goes away when the plot reveals itself. But I think, you know, the milkshake thing, for example, is indicative of that. That is before the plot as such has started.
I agree, but I do actually have like almost like a defense. I think that's the perfect way to do this, because I think and credit to, and I'll tell you this right now, I don't know how accurate I am. You'll never know how accurate I am with something like this, right? But I feel like I've got a pretty reasonably solid nose for sincere attempt to do a thing, and let's make some money when it comes to some of these sorts of projects. And who knows? No one will ever know how sincere the attempt was for any of these things. But this movie really feels like they cared. They wanted to do it right. They tried. They really put a lot of thought and effort into this movie. And for all, you know, for your own personal tastes, whether it works for you, completely different matter. But I feel like the movie was made with a lot of thought and care. And I think they knew they were making a movie that was based on a sketch from a sketch show. And I think they were like, well, the perfect solution to honoring what this movie should have, what this movie is from, but what it's going to be, is to start with have the start of our story occurring alongside some of those sketches, so that we're setting up that the movie will have a narrative thread, but we're also going to do a little bit of, you know, random customer comes in, has a horrible experience because they're incompetent, leaves. And they only really do that twice in the whole movie, to my knowledge. There's the initial angry guy, and then there's the meat patty something or nothing guy.
Yes,
but those scenes are pretty few and far between, even though there's only 3 of them I can think of. There's Ed in the milkshake and the 2 I just listed. The rest is pretty much focused on Dexter's story. So I think that they actually balance it really well, and then move away from it at the exact right time. So I would argue, just from a structure perspective, what a smart way to make a movie that feels like a movie with a whole plot and character development, but also honor that it comes from a sketch show.
And I think the reason you know it's sincere is scenes like the them on the rooftop and Dexter talking about his dad. Now, don't get me wrong. There's elements of that you can nitpick and I think could need to be changed because fundamentally that scene exists so that we're obviously in full spoilers here. That scene exists so that Ed can then give him the yo-yo and, it helps their friendship develop. Now, I think a stronger version, not even stronger, a stronger version of that scene is if you have Dexter tell us a story that either he or could be more overtly linked to him as a character. If it's a story about how his dad taught him that you have to look after yourself, suddenly him creating the contract and being a bit of a dick makes a bit more sense. If it's a story that justifies why he likes to try and be a bit of a rebel and nick his mum's car, that sort of links to his character and makes a bit more sense. But regardless of me thinking there are things you can do to take that scene further, that scene doesn't exist in a movie that isn't trying to do something more than make money. That scene is the scene of a film that is trying to put heart and character into this and trying to make it something. Otherwise, a scene like that just wouldn't exist. I think, you can definitely tell that they, as you said, were absolutely trying.
Yeah, and I think the script gives a lot of it away as well in terms of how much thought was put into it because it feels structurally quite tight and polished. These sort of films usually have this weird, chaotic energy to them that just comes from being an early draft that never really got plot threads that go nowhere, stories and character choices that don't quite make sense. Whereas in this, it all flows really logically. He gets in trouble, owes all that money, has to get the job, is miserable doing that, thinks of a quick scheme through the Source, but discovers a friendship and then has to sort of save the day and undo the damage he's done. Also with the Mondo Burger thing then coming in to sort of create our third act situation. That's been building alongside. It's all very it's quite. It just feels very like they really did write quite a lot of drafts of this script to try and get it tight and focused, because I just feel like a lazier version, and it probably would have made as much money as it made regardless. There's a version of this script that's way sloppier in execution, I'm more of adept at sniffing out an early draft of a script, I think, than production stuff. But also I think the production, there's a lot of I think they put a lot of thought into particularly the sets. I think are really great. The locations they chose to shoot in, they don't particularly go for very dynamic camera angles, but it's a really colorful environment that the characters are in. They took a lot of time, I think, getting those sets right, and I think they cast it really well too. I think they put a lot of thought into the casting. Everyone in this movie is really good. So. Not just the two principals. So yeah, I don't know. I think you're right. And then there's things with they put a surprising amount of heart into it, particularly around Ed. I think they understood that for Ed to not come across, because I think they figured something out here that I'm not even sure they figured out for Kenan and Kel. And I wonder, I don't think Kel from Kenan and Kel has anywhere near the amount of heart Ed has. And I might be wrong. I might not be.
No. No, I think that's fair. There are moments of heart in the show. The episode where Kenan moves away, in particular, is very heartfelt, right. Especially the ending of part 1. But things like the yo-yo, or just the unabashed, pure heart of making decisions based on what's best for other people, and it just being so second nature. He's not buying the yo-yo to keep him as a friend. He's buying the yo-yo because it's a nice thing to do, plain and simple. I don't think that heart of character is in Kenan and Kel as much, no.
No, and I think that's what makes Ed more tolerable as a character, I feel. I feel like if I went back and watched Kenan and Kel now, and I haven't done that, not done that, I do have Paramount Plus, so it's there. So I could. Very disappointingly, by the way, this film is not on Paramount Plus, despite being a Paramount film. Paramount Plus, what the fuck are you doing? this is such
that's
an
a
easy
shame.
win. Why? My only assumption is that they can't currently put it on, at least in the UK, because it's they've got some sort of contract with some other provider.
Yeah, although it's not. I mean, it's not on Prime. It's not on. Well, you can buy it on Prime. But it's not on. It's not streaming on Prime or Netflix.
Yeah, you can
though.
you can buy it on Prime for like £3, and I think you can buy it on YouTube for two something. I suspect Apple TV Plus, not Apple TV Plus, sorry, Apple TV have it to purchase also. Yeah, you're right. Actually, if it wasn't on Paramount Plus because of some other deal, it would be streaming for free somewhere. Was it on Netflix? I don't have Netflix anymore. I didn't check Netflix.
No, it's not on Netflix because I actually have a status where it comes up on my Facebook memories if I bother to check. There was a status I did like 10 years ago or something where I'm like, guys, Good Burger's on Netflix, and then every year I happen to see it, I share it and check again, and I'm like, still on Netflix, guys, or it's not on Netflix. So I know it has been on Netflix, and I think that happened last year. So, but yeah, it's not currently on Netflix now.
So I have this thing where I'm just kind of like, I don't really understand why it's not on Paramount Plus. But anyway, so getting back to the point, I think, Keenan and Kel, I really think the difference, I think Ed, I feel like I would find Kel annoying and obnoxious, and like he keeps doing all this insane stuff that makes everyone else's lives around him miserable. And he doesn't ever seem to atone for it. He doesn't understand it. Whereas with Ed, while he doesn't understand that he might be making other people's lives difficult sometimes, he does go out of his way to do the right thing, the nice thing, 9 times out of 10, to his understanding, to the best of his understanding and the best of his abilities, and that just really does separate him. I think, from Kel in a positive way. And again, it shows a certain amount of thought going up to a movie with these two as the leads, going, well, wait a minute, we can't just make this a joke machine. The show might have been that, the sketch show is certainly that. We need to put a bit more thought into what the story is, and while it isn't, again, and anyone laughing, thinking that we're over intellectualizing a very dumb movie, you are correct. That is what is happening here. But at the same time, I do feel and sense when I'm watching the movie a really clear, concise narrative arc and character design. And that's the other sign of a first draft script, is none of that stuff is clear or concise. Ed and Dexter behave in a really consistent way throughout this movie. Their choices always make sense with their character and what's going on around them, and that only happens when you put thought into it. One of the things that sometimes gives away a really poor script is when character does something and you go, would that character do that? Does that make sense based on what we already know about this person? So yeah, I honestly, like, while it isn't very deep, and you could argue that as a criticism, absolutely fine. I think it's surprisingly well maintained throughout the hour and a half runtime of the film. So yeah, thumbs up to the writers. I think they did a really good job, and I think the production's really good too. I think there's a lot of fun stuff going on visually in the movie.
Yeah, I'd completely agree with that, and I think it. And again, I know we've already talked about it, but and we don't want to just repeat a load. But have you got any specific jokes that stand out, Dan? I mean, one of mine, for example, still makes me laugh. It made me laugh yesterday as much as it always has, which is when Dexter gives Ed the contract, and Ed's looking at it and he's going, okay, yeah, and then he goes, I know some of these words.
Yeah, that's a good one. I will really always and forever. Although my brain rewrote it slightly.
Yes, I wondered how you'd feel about this, because I know what you're talking about and how you rewrote it, and I was even when you used to say it, in my head I went, I don't think that plays out quite like that.
Yeah,
and when I watched it, I was
memory
upset
has
to learn.
reworked it over the years.
Yeah.
So basically the joke is there's a dog that comes up to them and starts barking at them, and Ed is like, "What's that, boy? A car full of clowns? And they need help," and or something like that. And Ed's like, "Don't be silly. The dog just wants some food," and he gives him the burger. And then my memory is that later on, this is not what the movie has, is that they're crossing the road, and in the background there's a car that's smoke coming out of the engine, and there's a bunch of clowns stood around it, and you hear one say, "Where's that dog?" Which is great. The version we get is also very good, but it's much more wearing its joke on its sleeve. Like, the writer couldn't quite, like, bury such a clever joke in the background, and, like, really was like, no, we need an insert shot. So it's just literally a random insert shot where the focus front and center of the shot is the car with the smoke and the clowns. And where's that dog? And it's like, they've not done it subtly at all, which is fine, because this movie wears everything on its sleeve. But what a shame, because I think the version in my head is much more is much better, is much cleverer. But you know, that's fine.
Yeah.
No,
it's still very good, and it's a very modern, 2010s joke.
It is, yeah. But I mean, at the same time, though, worst joke. You should watch your butt. And he just starts circling himself, trying to look at his own butt.
Yeah,
not great.
There's a lot of bad in there. There's a lot of bad. I thought of another one I enjoy, which is after Dexter's big monologue about his dad and how he hasn't seen his dad since he was 7.
Yes,
he
this is a good one.
He can't even remember what his dad looks like, and Ed goes, "Yeah, I can't remember what my dad looks like either. But at least I get to see him every day."
No, he says, no, it's better than that. It's. I don't remember what my dad looks like either, and I see him every day. That's great. That is very specifically, that is very carefully phrased for Maximum. Ed being completely innocent and not at all insensitive, but at the same time, dumb as a bag of bricks.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about the other characters, because you're right. I think everyone else is brilliant. I think they're all playing their parts very well, and I think it should never be underestimated. And we should always talk, when we talk about this movie, about the fact that Abe Vigoda is in it,
yes,
which is absolutely astonishing.
Yeah, I mean, what's funny about that is obviously we did Mask of the Phantasm like 2 weeks ago, which he's in.
As well as being in The Godfather, as well as being in Look Who's Talking, as well as being in just some huge movies. And there is a whole generation of people that absolutely will know him for Good Burger.
Right, and I mean, look, by all accounts, he was an absolute beast on the set of this movie. Like, I think it was Kel that went and did an interview. It was asked about it years later. It was like, he was amazing. Like, he was jumping over fences and stuff while we were escaping the thing. He was like, I don't know how old he was at the time of filming the movie, but he was, he was not a spry man anymore. And yet he was fully committed. And you can tell that's what's amazing. This could have easily been, an actor, sort of towards the end of his career, just going, fuck it. Yeah, whatever, I'll do this stupid burger movie. What's my line? Oh no, Mondo Burger have poisoned the sauce. He could have just phoned it in. No one would have questioned that. No one at all. But genuinely, you can tell he is absolutely 110% committed to this role, despite it being, and no offense to this movie, but deeply beneath him. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, I think this movie is good at being exactly what this movie is supposed to be, a dumb family comedy. But fuck me, like, he really, really gives it his all, and he's great in this movie. He is so good in this film. So yeah, absolutely.
Not only that, first time I really noticed it, this time, and I don't know if it's because I'm just now more familiar with our work because of various shows we've done over the last few years. Linda Cardellini is in this movie.
Yep. That was a real surprise to me. I remembered that Sinbad was in the movie. I remembered that Carmen Electra was in the movie, which was, that's a pretty strange pull, especially because she's not fucking credited, but that's a different issue. We'll come back to that. But yeah, when I turned the movie on and the credits are happening and Kel's, roller skating around, Linda Cardellini's name hit the screen and I was like, who the fuck does she play? And I was looking out for her most of the movie until we get towards the end when she appears. Yeah. Incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Everyone's brilliant. Do you think the villain? Where do you stand on the villain? Hold on, let me get his name.
Kurt.
Yeah. So Kurt. So Jan Schwartzman.
Schweiterman.
Do you think he's the right level of pantomime villain? Do you think he's too far? I think for the movie he's in.
No, he's perfect. He's absolutely perfect. Yeah. He is the most 90s man I've ever seen in a movie. I think the 90s birthed him. You know how Anakin Skywalker was birthed by the midichlorians? He was like a virgin birth. I think this guy was born of the 90s, like literally, like the 90s formed him. He simultaneously looks like like he fell out of like. Well, he also feels like he fell out of like an early 2000s pop punk band also, but that's a different issue. You know what? But what a brilliant caricature of a villain. And look, this is the other thing as well. The movie also understands how stupid it is, so it never holds back on the plot being completely dumb. Like the idea of Mondo Burger is just absurd. Like it is in premise and execution, it's so insanely silly that it's its own joke, and that is fantastic. Like the building just is no restaurant would be that big, but then it's comically small on the inside. Like you see it from the outside, and it looks like a giant shopping mall-esque building that's just one burger place. But then you go in, and it's one counter and about 9 tables. But then behind the scenes, it's like a multi-roomed burger factory. It's the most phenomenal. Just everything about it is absurd, and all of that I assume is intent. It could have just been logistics, but wow.
When the plot hinges on the building collapsing because they've put so much illegal additive in the burgers that they grow too big, like
and explode.
Everything's absurd by design. And of course, Dan.
Yeah, wow.
And of course, Dan. You know, in terms of the movie, because this is the other thing. You know, because I said earlier, we talked about how everything's intended in this. You know, everything's intended in this movie. And I talked about that scene where, you know, Dexter talks about his dad and his past and stuff. Let me also tell you, Dan, no film puts a musical dance number in without knowing that they're putting a musical dance number in. This film has a dance number, Dan. What did you think of that?
I'll be honest with you, Chris. I think I don't even think I cared for it as a kid, but I kind of enjoyed it this time. I think
I've never particularly loved that,
but I think I quite liked it this time because it is really weird and it does feel like out of place. But there's just, I mean, I tell you what I mostly don't like about it is how it concludes. Actually, if I'm being honest, I don't like that instead of it being used as a distraction, it's used as an opportunity to like comedically punch these 2 giant security guards unconscious, which just I don't believe Dexter could do.
Yes, that element of it, rewatching, I was like, oh, that's the plan. Like,
right. I would have preferred it if he just, while they were distracted watching the dancing, been able to steal the keys. That's a better
yes
way for that scene to play out. It's less, maybe a bit more predictable, but I'm okay with that. That's fine.
It does lead though to again another brilliant joke, which is when they go through all this thing to get the big scary dude to bust them out of a window and smash a window, and then the old man jumps through it, and then Ed needlessly smashes through the other window to escape.
Yeah, which is actually a joke they do with a surprising amount of patience because and subtlety, because they don't hang a hat on that. Like, this is a movie where they hang a hat on every joke, like massively so. Like, they just do. It's weird, but it's fine. It's kind of the tone of the film, is that like no joke goes without it like nudging you in the arm and going, yeah. You know, they're all like that. That's just the movie. And again, that will definitely put off some people from watching this film. But that's one of those jokes that they just do, and they don't reference, and they don't make a big thing of it. It's just, if you're actually paying attention, you'll go, oh, that's kind of. He's literally just gone through the side. Like he could have just gone through the same hole. That's a good joke because it's not. Again, they don't hang a hat on it the same way they do with the others. So that's good. I enjoyed that. Didn't need a Dexter reaction on the ground. So yeah, very, very good. So going back to the cast, I was really impressed with Shah Jackson, who plays Monique. She also brings a lot of heart to this movie. Her, particularly the scene when she discovers Dexter's sort of plot to grift Ed out of a lot of his money. Yeah. It's done really well, and like while it is verbalizing the thing that's been in the movie unsaid thus far, which is about like Ed's sort of dim but deeply lovable character. I think that's fine because I think in a kids movie you don't want the kid to miss that's the thing.
Yeah, I think that scene's great, and equally the scene where she says the reason she changed her mind on him is because of Ed, because Ed's got a lot of time for him, so he must therefore be all right. I think she's brilliant, and actually hers and Kenan Thompson's chemistry is also very good. Yes. It's very real, very believable. It's performed very well by both of them. The only shame with that storyline is, and I think you do it in one scene, when Dexter rips up the contract, and it's important that he does that of his own choice for no obvious gain to himself, as he does in the film. But you just have her. All we need to do is cut away to her in Good Burger, seeing that happen, seeing that he's made that choice, because they don't really resolve their tension or plot. Like that's just
that's fair.
I just think one shot. You don't have to have them have any dialogue or talking, but if you had one shot of her seeing him do that and smiling to herself, we as an audience would know they're probably going to be okay and maybe even get together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point actually, because I said earlier that the movie it fully resolves itself and there's no plot threads left hanging. You're right, that one is left. That's pretty much the only one I can think of though. But yeah, absolutely, the relationship with Kenan and Shah Jackson is actually Dexter and Monique. Dear Lord, names. Who needs names? Names are too complicated. We should all just be, hey, you over there. Way easier. So, hey, you over there, one, and hey, you over there, two. No, that's more complicated, Chris. I thought I've just discovered.
That is, yeah. Yeah, you've made that more confusing, if I'm honest, Dan.
Maybe we need some sort of system where everyone has like has a title or a name of their own that you can refer to them by. That might be easier.
Well, I think Kenan and Kel had it right. You just name the characters after the actors. It's much easier.
Yeah, then I don't have two names to remember for each person. So Dexter and Monique's relationship is completely unresolved. And I think actually, thinking about it now, with that in mind, that's probably actually a bigger criticism than anything we've said so far. That's actually that's a big one. Because they do spend a lot of the movie establishing their relationship and building their relationship, and not paying that off at the end is actually a pretty big flaw. Doesn't need a lot, because nothing in this movie needs a lot. It's all done in small scenes here and there, because again, the plot and character stuff is paper thin to make room for all the jokes.
And I've got a bit of a cold at the moment, by the way, so apologies if my coughing is annoying. That's what I was gonna say. Look, I didn't notice as a kid. Like yesterday is the first time I noticed that. So, there is that argument, but I think, especially when you can resolve it, in my opinion at least, with one shot, I think it's a shame that it's not there. Because, like you say, there are a fair few scenes dedicated to them, including that really fun first one where Dexter's trying to hit on her, and he's like, I really like how it brings out the colour of your eyes. And she's like, yeah, imagine how annoyed I was when I came to work and discovered everyone was wearing the same thing. It's good.
Yeah. That has bothered me more than I thought it might. Well, now I'm thinking about it, because otherwise, it undercuts my entire point about the script being quite tight and well thought out.
I'm sorry to have done that to you, Dan.
and it could have been, you're right, it could have been resolved in like 30 seconds to a minute. That is disappointing. I'm trying to look for like anything. I've got the shot open in front of me of when they return to the the burger joint, like heroes or whatever. But they even take a minute for him to give half the money to Sinbad. Oh man.
Yeah, the Sinbad thing was weird because I like that. Sinbad's also very good in this movie, and I think
Sinbad gets a bad rap, man. But we talked about him in Jingle All the Way. Like he was good in that, and I think he's good in this.
Yeah, he's doing what he needs to do well, in my opinion. And
Yeah.
like he, what makes me laugh about the Sinbad thing is like Dexter's there. Surely Sinbad at the end is going to be like, I don't know how you're involved in this, but you're involved in this somehow. And instead he's just like, help me get the burger off the car. Like, maybe he's flustered and distracted. But I don't think Dexter's earned the right to be cocky when it comes to Sinbad. Like, he's not even giving him all the money back, but he's still like a bit of a cock about it. Whilst we've mentioned them as well, like, considering how young they'd have been here, Keenan and Kel really do like carry this movie, and Kel's performance in particular. I don't think I'd really appreciated as a kid just how good he is. He's great in this. Like, he really is delivering in terms of verbal performance, physical performance. Like, they both are, for sure. But I don't think I realised how much of the comedy of this film falls on Kel Thompson's shoulders. And he really does carry it well.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think as well, like... And I think that's an easier one to get spotted and credited for. I think because those sort of loud comedy characters are sort of you know no one watches Aladdin and doesn't come away talking about how amazing Robin Williams is as the genie, right? But that kid voicing Aladdin does a really good job. He brings a lot of heart and thingy to it. And I feel the same way about Keenan in this movie too. I think he, it's a less rewarding job. In terms of people aren't going to highlight you as much for it. But, what Kel is doing doesn't work without what Keenan is doing. He is the straight man in the role. And again, you get less credit for being the straight man, but like, it's really important. Like it's a deeply important role. He carries a lot of the movie's plot and character stuff. Because, Ed as a character can't evolve. Ed is a character that absolutely is unable to evolve. It's physically, you would destroy his character to try and do an arc with him. He has to remain simple and unencumbered. That's the whole point, right? He says it at the beginning, like about how it must be nice to like not have any like. What problems do you have? Like none, because you care about nothing. All of the character stuff has to be on Keenan's shoulders as Dexter, and I think he does a great job too. So I think between the two of them, it's such a good balance. Oh,
by the way, just to loop back to it, because I did look it up. They reckon only 100 people worldwide are, but you can be allergic to water. So if
really?
That guy I knew from school's mum was, then I apologise profusely. But yeah, apparently it only a 2020 study reported approximately 100 cases of aquagenic eutychana worldwide, but you can come out in hives and stuff. So you can be allergic to water.
Fascinating.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm confused,
There
Chris.
you go. What by what, Dan?
I was just flicking through bits of the movie as I've been talking, because why not, right? Like I've just, I've had it on in the background just in case it reminds me of any scenes or things I want to talk about. Because I'll be honest with you, I just let this movie wash over. I didn't do notes or anything on this one. I did a couple, but nothing really. So there won't be notes at this point towards the end of this movie. But why is Linda Cardellini's character at Good Burger at the end of the movie?
Is she? What's the time reference? I've got it up as well.
I've got two. She's in it twice. I've got it at wait. Sorry. No, sorry. This is one of those things where like 1 hour, 30 minutes, and 28 seconds. When they put him on their shoulders, and it turns around to the front-facing shot of him on the shoulders of Mr. Bailey and Thingy, and they're walking through the restaurant. She can be seen briefly behind. I might take a screenshot of this. Behind Mr. Bailey.
Oh yeah, that does seem to be her. Yeah.
Yeah, I've just got a really clear shot. That is 100% her. And then there's another shot in the end where you can see her bow in the background. You know when the whole crowd are like talking to him.
Yeah.
Her bow is clearly there.
Oh yeah. Well, maybe she escaped as well. She jumped out the window. Looked for loud noises, I guess.
I want answers, Chris.
Maybe there must be a deleted scene or something where she escapes too. But they say goodbye, don't they?
Uh-huh.
I get what that dialogue is.
I'm very upset.
Uh,
Right. Why? What's her character called? Heather. Why is Heather in the restaurant at the end of...
Yeah, there's no indication that she's going to leave. She's like, Ed, hurry.
Only things adults notice in Good Burger.
Yeah, there's no indication she wants to escape or anything like that as well.
I'm so
Still love
upset.
that joke.
I'm so upset. Oh, I do. I right. So, I do have a slight criticism of the movie, by the way. The movie likes to do ridiculous things, right? That are like over the top on purpose because that's kind of like the thing, right? So like Mondo Burger is an insane thing that exists and should not exist. Yes, we agree that Mondo Burger is kind of like like ridiculous on purpose, you know, for comedic effect. And that doesn't somehow stretch the believability of the world, because the plot of the movie is that a rival restaurant that's big and shiny and crazy opens across the road and makes the little quaint Good Burger nearly go out of business, right? That's plot of movie, I understand. The plot of the movie that the Mondo Burger are doing bigger burgers because they're chemically inducing them, again, makes sense, but they've turned it up to 11, right? They've zipped it right up. So they're literally putting like a drop of some illegal chemical on it. It goes through like a machine and comes out like Back to the Future style, like hydrated, like it's suddenly way bigger, which is silly. It's a silly way to visualize it, but the real world logic of that follows, right? There are burger restaurants that chemically induce their burgers, not to make them bigger necessarily, but to increase taste and stuff. And I'm not necessarily saying they use illegal chemicals, but use chemicals to do that. So there's a real world logic to that, right? That tracks, as is the storyline of a big fancy new store opening across the street. The one plot element, Chris, that I cannot get past and probably will never get past is them going to an insane asylum. Under what grounds were they thrown into an insane asylum? That is kidnapping.
So
that is a massive, that is a crime, is what we call that. That you know, and on what grounds were they not allowed to like? Do they not have to be consulted? Does a psychologist not have to sign off that they're not well? Like, what is happening here? Now, I know they try to throw it away with a quick line, Chris, of call our friend at the mental asylum. Like, oh, we know a guy. We know him so well. He's going to illegally imprison these guys for us. But what the fuck? What?
So Jess had two comments throughout the movie.
Yeah.
One was, "This is ridiculous." I can't remember where she said it, quite early on. And then two was, "So he's arranged for them to go to a institute, like, to keep them quiet?" And I'm like, "Yep. Look, more than the logic not making sense, I think there are two scenes in this movie that have aged really, really badly. All the Roxanne stuff is uncomfortable to watch. and just feels a bit chauvinistic, voyeuristic. I don't know what the right word is. A bit degrading, maybe. And all the stuff in the institute, the fact that it's called, what's it called? Like Demented Asylum or something? Demented Hills. It's just in really poor taste. And a lot of the jokes in that bit are in quite poor taste. And yeah, that stuff is uncomfortable. And I can't defend really either of those scenes. I think the logic is, for a kids' film, the logic of the villains sending them, like, okay, fine, doesn't make any sense, but like you say, it's maybe it's just as exaggerated as the huge Mondo burger, but yeah, just those two scenes and the Demented Hills stuff in particular, the fact that that's the name of it and they specifically say that and show that, it's not very funny. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it doesn't really track logically, and it. The thing is, right? Three of my favorite things, not favorite maybe, but like three things I really liked about this movie were in the sequence, though. That's what's tricky about it, because the simple answer is Mondo Burger just trap him in a broom cupboard inside the restaurant and say, look, you can stay here till tomorrow, because by tomorrow we'll have already ruined Good Burger's reputation. We're going to poison the sauce, right? So you guys just stay put. We'll let you out tomorrow, when this is all fucking said and done. That makes more sense. And then when they escape, they're already in the restaurant. They have to get back into the restaurant, which is funny, but that's the cleaner way to do it, right? You could do it that way, no problem. But I really love him helping the guy at the straitjacket. And then that guy, helping them later. I think that, again, is Ed doing a nice thing, coming back and paying off well for him. That's lovely. I love the Linda Cardellini stuff. And I like the dance. Even though I don't like how the dance ends, I think as an adult, I think the dance is really a fun, zany thing to do. I really, what I like most about the dance, I'm thinking about this, I like that, they all seem miserable in that place, right? All the patients. Kel brings some joy to them.
Well, in general, the two, I like the fact that they're like seemingly very quickly. Like, I like the fact that Keenan's playing cards and he's just like adapted, and he's like, stop eating the cards to that one dude.
Yeah, that's funny. So
it's funny stuff.
Yeah,
it's just a bit uncomfortable, isn't it? There's just an undertone to both, which is uncomfortable. And look, we've talked about this plenty of times. Like, you can point at uncomfortable stuff in every film fucking prior to 2020 and sometimes after. Like, but yeah. What do you think? So, what do you think of the? Because we've not really discussed, and I'd quite like to know if we can jump to some triv early. Although I imagine there's not a huge amount of triv for this film, but the Roxanne and loop it into. So, what's the deal with Karma Electra then?
Well, I'll be honest with you, Chris. There isn't much truth for this film. It's not a film people really seem to think about or care about much, because what tends to happen when we've talked about this before, but just for new listeners, if there's anyone jumping on for this episode, trivia varies. If it's a really classic film that a lot of people have done interviews and stuff about, stuff comes out over the years. There'll be a DVD with a commentary, and we'll learn a bunch, and then that will become trivia, right? About the production of the movie. This was made for this reason. This person did this for this reason. But then you get movies like this, which literally the DVDs have never had special features. That's actually part of the triv later. There's never been a DVD.
No, Dan. No,
Chris. I know what you're going to say. You're going to say the All That sketch. Go fuck yourself.
So I look up Good Burger on Amazon because I have to. I bought it on Prime, even though I own it on DVD. But I'm just a lazy boy, Dan. And I noticed that there's a Steelbook Blu-ray edition.
25th anniversary edition. Yes.
I got so fucking excited, Dan. I couldn't tell you. I went to add it to my basket immediately, and then I looked, and the only extra feature doesn't even suggest it's been upgraded picture quality wise. The only extra feature is one sketch from all that. Now, here's the thing. if you fucking wanted to do this properly, because if you're going to go to the effort of creating yes, I'm ranting. If you're going to go to the effort of creating a steelbook, that suggests that you think there is interest there. So why not go further? I think you could get both of those guys, Keenan and Kel, in for a commentary. There's sketches that have been on Jimmy Fallon.
It's worse than that, Chris.
There's a 25-minute fucking behind-the-scenes making of documentary that Nickelodeon made that's on YouTube that you can watch and have, and I have, by the way. And more than that, Dan, you could put 2 sketches up, or 3 sketches, or all the fucking sketches. What were you going to say?
There was a campaign in 2011-ish that Nickelodeon needed to release a 20th anniversary Blu-ray disc by the summer of sort of 2017 going into 2018. And they wanted them to include the On the Job with Keenan and Kel, the video for We're All Dudes, deleted scenes, and the Nick in the Afternoon bumpers, which featured footage from the premiere of the film and other bits and bobs.
Also
Paramount and Nickelodeon.
On YouTube.
Go on, sorry.
Also on YouTube, so that stuff categorically exists, is what I'm saying. I don't know about the deleted scenes, but all the rest of it.
100%. Nickelodeon and Paramount have ignored this request, and so I don't know if I did. Wait, my brain has just died. I did mention the names of the 2 guys pushing for this. That started, right? So there's a fan movement started by 2 fans, Mason Morgan and Ryun Jones. The show is called The Marvelous M Show. They basically have been pushing. They were pushing for that. No 20th anniversary DVD was released, and certainly none with extras. Then it was announced there would be a 25th anniversary edition of the film, Blu-ray and DVD. That actually came out this year, Chris. None of the special features that they requested were added. As you mentioned, just one, the very first Good Burger sketch from all that. So not only did they go ahead and do an anniversary release, but they didn't even do the things that everyone was asking for. So fuck you to Paramount and Nickelodeon.
The steelbook looks beautiful. Like the casing, looks fantastic.
Yeah, it's really good.
But sorry, you were saying you were explaining Triv before I ranted.
Yeah, so for us, it's usually just about what's available, and in a movie like this where there's a DVD with no special features, don't you dare mention the All That thing. It becomes very difficult for us to find information about a movie like this because people just aren't being asked about it. They're not talking about it. It's not coming up very often. So I have no idea why this is the case. But inexplicably, despite having as much screen time probably as Linda Cardellini, Carmen Electra is not even so much as credited for her role in this movie. And I have no idea why that is the case. She's not in the credits at all. The character is not mentioned.
That's insane. Was it to keep it a surprise? Well, no, because that's less of a thing. That would have been less of a thing back then. It's not like people were scouring.
Right, but also the credits are at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And also, I'm pretty sure legally you have to credit people for their work. I think the Actors Guild have some say in that. So I do not know why she was uncredited in the role. There have been plenty of times in the past when actors have had small surprise cameo roles that are like blinking you'll miss it or whatever, and they go uncredited because the whole point was they just wanted to show up very briefly. Daniel Craig in Force Awakens, he's a stormtrooper. He's not getting credited. That's understandable. He didn't work on the movie. He's just, he showed up on set, did a brief thing, got out of there. Carmen Electra is in multiple scenes, delivering dialogue, doing acting, stunt work. How is she not credited for her work in this movie? Not only is it deeply uncomfortable, that whole section of the movie, as Chris pointed out earlier, I don't even know why it's so uncomfortable. I just think it's the idea of somebody trying to seduce Ed is upsetting. But also, sorry, Chris, I've just dropped my headphone. That must have sounded like I was falling down the stairs to you.
No, it wasn't too bad.
Okay. My headphone fell out on my ear and rolled down my it bumped off my chest and then rolled down one of my legs because I'm sat cross-legged. That was quite weird. Anyway,
it's also the fact that she says I quit, which implies that literally she has been hired to seduce men.
Now, so I didn't read it that way. The I quit thing is I think she works at the restaurant.
Right, yeah.
I think she's a Mondo Burger employee that normally wears the silver jumpsuit and makes burgers or serves, out front or whatever. And they were like, we need someone to get it out of him. Let's send in Roxanne, meaning like we'll pick an attractive member of staff and we'll send them after him. That's my reading of it. But not helped by the fact that she's named Roxanne. And they play the song Roxanne, which is, I believe, a song about a prostitute.
Yeah.
So, inappropriate for a kid's movie. Don't like the connotation. No, thank you.
Yeah, completely.
Ick on all fronts. Ick on not crediting Carmen Electra for her work, because she's very funny in this movie, despite the movie not doing right by her. And just, for not crediting her for her work at all. That's shitty. That's shitty.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. I can't think of any reason for that.
So I have two questions for the creators of this film. Writer producer Dan Schneider, who's also in the movie. He plays the guy that owns the restaurant.
Yes, who we have so far deliberately avoided talking about, despite not discussing that with each other at all. I assume that's sort of an unconscious, conscious move not to talk too much about Dan.
No, I don't know anything about the man. Is there a reason we wouldn't be talking about Dan? I've not talked about him yet because we just haven't got to it. But is there a reason we wouldn't talk about him? I was going to then mention Brian Robbins, the director, and question both of those people to come forward and explain to me why the fuck Carmen Electra isn't credited. What's the deal with Dan Schneider? Who plays Mr. Bailey?
He's a Nickelodeon producer as well as an actor, etc. And he's been accused of hypersexual practices by people that worked with Nickelodeon at the time.
What does that mean?
So, I've got another article here.
I just don't know what does it mean by hypersexual. I don't like. I've never heard that phrase before.
Basically, there was an expose which detailed a traumatizing on-set environment with underage actors and concern over sexually suggestive scenes involving Ariana Grande, Victoria Justice, and Jamie Lynn Spears. So he was basically accused of controlling behaviour with sort of a sexual sort of slant on it. So he's part of all of that fucking horrible stuff.
Oh, okay. Well, Dan Schneider can go in a bin. Not worth mentioning here. That's very unfortunate that he's connected to this movie. But it sounds like he was connected to a shit ton of stuff from Nickelodeon's era. But I mean, he's very directly involved in this. He wrote the movie to some degree. He obviously produced it, and then he's in it quite a lot too, which is a shame. Because obviously, clearly talented, I feel. Wouldn't have been so successful at making kids TV for so long if he wasn't, I guess. But talent does not negate being an absolute monster. So,
yeah. Oh, here we go. Oh no, it is on his Wikipedia. So it was August this year, in fact, that it came out.
Oh wow! We should have done this. We should have done this podcast, Chris, last year, so we could live in peace. Now I have to live on knowing that. Ugh, gross. Anyway,
I honestly thought you'd looked and seen that as well, and that was why his name hadn't come up at this point.
Nope. I had made a mental note at some point to give him a thumbs up for, because one thing to like write the movie, but to like, to also put yourself into a role, especially the role of the boss when he's the boss of all these kids, like because he was producing these shows and stuff. I thought that was a kind of a fun idea, and I think he did reasonably well as someone who I assume wasn't necessarily a trained actor. He's good in the movie. Again, being a monster doesn't prohibit you from being talented, which is part of the problem often.
So he's done odd appearances in things like he was Angus in an episode of Kenan and Kel, in fact, and Taxi Driver in Zoe 101. But it seems, Jesus, his role as producer and creator, all that, Kenan and Kel, The Amanda Show, Drake and Josh, Zoe 101, iCarly. Jesus, so he's like a big part of Nickelodeon, basically.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm saying like that's really upsetting to hear that he was like that, because he worked on a great number of shows, and I'm sure a significant number of people probably suffered at his hands. That's awful. So anyway, so I had no idea that was the case. And
you were about to name Brian Robbins as well, I assume.
Yeah, Brian Robbins, who I believe directed the movie. Yeah, so I should double check that actually. Yeah, Brian Robbins. So yeah, so my question to Brian Robbins, because Dan Schneider can go in a bin, is I need two things from you, Brian. Come on, Bri, come closer. Listen, please, my friend, my buddy, Bri. Good old Bri. Please don't turn out to be a monster also, because I just called you my buddy.
I was going to say, let's just double check that Brian Robbins isn't a monster before you refer to him as good old Bri.
Brian Robbins, who solely was involved in making this movie, no one else.
The only thing I can see for Brian Robbins is because Brian Robbins is in the behind the scenes on YouTube, and seemingly is a lot of fun, and people really get on with him. What's crazy about Brian Robbins? These are his last 3 director films. Yeah, you ready? Okay. Norbit. God, Norbit, man, he's doing an Eddie Murphy movie that tanked. Oh man, I hope he moved on from that for his next one. Meet Dave. Oh, okay. Right, how many bad Eddie Murphy movies does it take to tank a career? It takes 3, Dan. 1,000 Words, which I actually watched and isn't horrendous. Yeah, his last 3 films are the sort of legendary Eddie Murphy bad movies. That's crazy.
Amazing. He was also a producer on Coach Carter, which I saw and thought was fine.
Yeah, Coach Carter's all right.
That's fantastic.
Anyway.
He also made the Shaggy Dog remake. Yikes. Oh God, I'm just looking through now. Wow, he's done some... Oh, he worked on Cousin Skeeter. I loved that show. Anyway,
and also he's not seemingly, as far as we can tell, been accused of predatory behaviour, so that's good.
So, that's a plus. Yeah. So, Mr. Robbins, Brian, if I may, I'll be more formal this time, because I don't want to. Got to play it safe. There's monsters hiding everywhere.
So... Sorry. Just to say, because we've almost sort of seemingly shat on his career. He's head of Paramount Pictures. He became head of Paramount Pictures in September 2021.
Right, okay, fine.
So whilst he's no longer directing, he seemingly is still very much in.
Yeah, I figured as much. Yeah, I saw he had a big line of producer credits, so I was assuming that's what he was doing. But yeah, just in terms of some of the stuff he worked on, like I said, credit for this film, and then let's be honest, we all enjoyed Cousin Skeeter.
Yeah, who didn't
just
like
me?
Cousin Skeeter for sure?
Just me. Anyway. He also did some directing on All That, so I'm guessing that's how he got the job, as directing the movie. And also actually explains why this movie seems to have a good amount of respect for All That as well, and the sketch, the original sketch. So anyway, I want to know 2 things. I want to know what happened to Carmen Electra. Why was she not credited? And I want to know why Linda Cardellini is in the burger place at the end. I've been Googling it. I've had no luck. This is about to borderline on obsession. Like, I'm about to try and see if I can figure this guy's email address out and reach out. Like, is he on Twitter? I'm gonna find. I retired from Twitter. I turned off my Twitter like 2 or 3 weeks ago. It's still there, the account, but I don't have any. I've not used it. I might go back on to dig this guy out. I need to know.
I love the notion of the guy being head of Paramount Pictures. And he's just like, fucking, why are people still asking me about Good Burger, man?
I don't care. I must know.
You know what I want to know, Dan? And we're nearly done. Because we always find this with comedies. We don't want to just list jokes, etc. So
speak for yourself, Chris. Do you like the bit when the guy falls into the thing? I couldn't think of a joke quickly enough. Do you like the bit where they meet Shaquille O'Neal, Chris? And they get excited about meeting Shaquille O'Neal?
This is where I was going, Dan. How have we got an hour and 20 minutes into this review and we have not yet mentioned that Shaquille O'Neal is in this movie?
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's a fun little scene. It is one of the things that feel more like a sketch.
Yes, for sure.
But basically the premise is they get a burger order and they see where it is and get very excited because they know what's happening. And I guess see the name on the order. They bring the burgers to Shaquille O'Neal, who's in the middle of a press conference. And they just give him the burgers in the middle of his interview and then make him review the burger in front of the cameras, which I think is bad form.
Yes,
put the burgers in his dressing room. Well, we haven't really talked about Ed's gross-looking secret sauce.
Oh yeah, quite a pivotal plot point, isn't it?
Yeah, but the premise for those who don't remember of how the restaurant doesn't immediately collapse when Mondo Burger opens is that it turns out lovable Ed, makes his own sauce and it's really good and everyone loves it. And it makes Good Burger popular again, but that Mondo Burger react badly to that, and then they poison the sauce, and it's stopping Good Burger from opening. It becomes the thrust of the third act, because obviously if they open and serve it, they'll make people sick, and it'll put them out of business. Blah blah blah. But yeah, the secret sauce is fun. It looks gross as hell though. You can tell me all you like, movie, that sauce is delicious. You could do a whole scene where one by one everyone tries it and loves it. Go for it. I don't believe you.
Just thought the movie.
It is Nickelodeon orange. I suspect on purpose, but it's fucking gross looking.
Yeah, I hadn't noticed that. Yeah. I'd never noticed that. You're right.
Yeah. That's got to be intent. I assume that's intent.
It has to be.
But it's just so disgusting. Carry on.
I thought it looks alright.
I want to know more about. I want to know more about Jess's opinion on this film. Actually, I've been waiting to ask you about that. So.
When the sauce, she didn't particularly care for this movie, but when the sauce, I think she got a lot of enjoyment out of how much I enjoyed this movie. Yeah. That might also be though, because usually, if you laugh like fairly silently, you usually can't hear it. This is me laughing fairly silently. You can't hear that. However, Dan, if you've got a cold and you laugh like that, it comes across as like it's really audible. Like it's like this real husky thing followed by a cough. So I think I basically it's like she watched the movie next to Muttley. I think she really enjoyed.
Excellent.
I think she really enjoyed witnessing me watch this film and verbally still get a kick out of it and enjoy it. The actual movie herself, in her own opinion, she didn't particularly care for it. I think she was a little bit offended because she cooked us dinner, and the first thing I said when I put on the movie was, I kind of wish we were eating burgers with this film. It just felt logical. Bless her. I felt bad. I immediately apologised. It was a wonderful tea, Dan. It was chicken with some cream cheese wrapped in ham. It was lovely.
That's delicious. But I know what you mean though, because Nadia and I have learned the hard way that like if you're watching a movie or a TV show with a particular food in it, like you should probably make sure you have something similar if you can, because the movie will make you crave the thing, especially if the food in the movie looks good, which the food in this movie mostly does. It does make you crave the thing in question.
But when the sauce thing happened, she went, "Oh no, what's going to be in the sauce?" And that is a fun like parallel. You know, that's how the movie could go. Like Ed's put something ridiculous in the sauce or something like that. Moving back to the Shaquille O'Neal thing, he apparently was amazing because I did watch the On the Job with Keegan and Kel documentary, and apparently he was brilliant. Like he was signing stuff all day. He was really friendly, and they actually filmed it in the actual stadium and actual locker room and stuff.
You can tell. I was gonna say that. I you can absolutely tell they filmed that scene inside, like for real, like the stadium, because they do all these really great shots where they're running through like the hallways, and you can see the full stadium through the doors, and like you just wouldn't bother CGIing that. Like that'd be too much money to do a green screen effect for. Very impressive.
Yeah, I thought so.
I'm glad Shaq was good on set. I've always liked Shaquille O'Neal. I think he's a weird but funny guy. He's a quirky dude. Like the amount of like clips that have gone viral of him on like being like a basketball pundit and just being insane are pretty good. There's a lot of them. He's a quirky guy. I really like him. So yeah,
that's awesome. There you go. Yeah. Any other? I think that's. Have you got anything else?
We haven't touched on cross-dressing is funny. It's not.
It's not, but I've got to admit, as a kid, the notion that he'd gone as far as to wear the underwear did make me laugh as a kid.
I guess, yeah, that's a
I've
reasonably
I've
funny
gotta be
joke because
honest.
again, it implies that he can't not like do that. Um, you know. But speaking of Kel's attire, really great running joke is that he never doesn't wear his Good Burger uniform, other than that one scene where they're dressed as quote unquote women for comic effect. It's not a great
Can I
scene.
just say, because obviously there's two moments of that which are insane.
Particularly
One is
insane,
him
yes.
wearing it on the date and just adding a tie is legitimately funny. And
Yeah.
two, this movie tells you what kind of movie it's going to be right up top.
Yep.
When you have Ed showering in his Good Burger uniform.
Which I love everything about that. That's great. That's just great.
I don't know if this is going to be in Triv, and apologies if I'm literally stealing from 3 bits of trivia. But the other thing of note that was in the On the Job with Keenan and Kel documentary is that the character's credited as dancing crazy. But the guy who is like, yeah, no, change the music in the asylum is played by George Clinton, who is a funk musician. And quite well known and quite a big deal. And so yeah, that's just fun. Like how they attracted like Karma Electra, George Clinton, Abe Thingamajig, and Shaquille O'Neal to this movie is just phenomenal to me.
Yeah, so actually that's a good point. So Carmen Electra, she was in Baywatch, right? That was like her big break.
I don't know.
One
I just
sec.
know that she's still well known enough for when she came on just to go, is that Karma Electra? I'm like,
Right.
yep.
Right, 100%. I'm just trying to see. Oh, so this was around the time she was in Baywatch. So maybe she wasn't like a huge star yet. Maybe? Oh, so
Why
she'd been
wasn't
doing a
she
lot of
credited
glamour
back?
model work at this point. So she'd already had frequent appearances in Playboy and other things. She just relocated. So she got the job on Baywatch in 1997, which is the year this movie comes out. So Carmen Electra, to be fair, had her career sort of take off the year this movie came out. By the look of it.
And by the looks of it as well, Shaquille O'Neal joined the Los Angeles Lakers in 1996. So he'd just joined when he was, doing
Right.
this.
So he was a big deal at the time because he must have been because their reaction is obviously, But yes, clearly only just like he had sort of his career had just taken off. So that's fun.
Yeah, so it came out July 97. Oh, so was it February 98 in the UK then?
Yes.
Because you were talking about February. Jeez,
Mhm.
6 months later. Really, wow. Crazy. Which means I would have been 9. That's confirmed. So it would have filmed when it just joined LA Lakers, yeah.
Yeah, and it's Carmen Electra's. It's a joint. Well, so in 1991, she appeared as herself in a television film called The Ride Divine. I don't know what that's to do with, but in terms of scripted content and acting, she had 2 roles in 1997. One was American Vampire, and one was Good Burger. So yeah, Carmen Electra was not Carmen Electra yet, if that makes sense. So yeah, but still, and I still want to know what the fuck happened.
According to... Now, I can't particularly see this... Well, maybe... Oh, no, of course, that's why. Never mind. And my mind was about to be blown, because in the Wikipedia, it says music by Stuart Copeland, who is obviously the drummer in The Police. And I was like, Stuart Copeland did all the music for this film? But of course, he presumably wrote Roxanne, as opposed to soundtracking the entire movie.
Well, now, you've said something very interesting there, Chris.
Yeah, go on.
Because Stuart Copeland, to me, and I know obviously drummer for The Police, big deal, but Stuart Copeland is known to me for doing the music for the video games for Spyro.
Right, okay.
And when I turned on this movie, Chris, I said to Nadia, this opening theme sounds like a theme from Spyro. I'm not kidding you, Chris. I genuinely think there's a real chance Stuart Copeland did the music for this movie. I'm not kidding. Let me look that up, because I'm serious when I say I genuinely said that to Nadia.
Well, apparently the soundtrack reached 101 on the Billboard 200 chart.
Chris, music by Stuart Copeland.
That's crazy. That's awesome.
And because I was listening to the opening theme, and I literally, let me see if I've got it here. Here, this sounds to me like music from Spyro. Wait, not this. That's just the logo. This music.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Having this year replayed through Spyro the Reignited trilogy, all 3 games, that immediately made my brain go, that's like Spyro music. And now knowing that that's Stuart Copeland means I do not feel crazy anymore. Why did I not think to actually look up if it was him?
That is crazy. That's awesome.
Fantastic.
Oh wait, yeah, film scores. Oh, he's done a shit ton, and film scores. Good Burger is listed as a film score. Yeah, he did do it. He literally did it.
Yeah. Well, there you go. We've all learned something today.
God, I'd love to know. Wouldn't it be fascinating to know? Because the drummer from The Police doesn't need to do the music for "She's All That," which he did.
Yeah, but I guess once the police goes away, like you need a job. Oh, I'll compose music for.
I'd love to know the breakdown, wouldn't you? I'd love to know how much money he's made from like film scoring. That's awesome.
I'm going to assume more than he made from being the drummer in The Police. To be honest.
No, of course not.
You don't think the drummer? You think the drummer's getting as much?
Huh? No, he's getting more. He's getting more from his work in The Police for sure. I like the way that
if he was Sting, I'd agree with that. But he's the drummer. The real money in music is if you quote unquote wrote the song. This is why McCartney and Lennon always fought over those credits and why they always gave Ringo 1 song per album.
Let's see if there's a breakdown. So his net worth apparently is $80 million.
I'm not saying he's making no money from The Police. I'm just saying, like, as the drummer who's not quoted as or won't be credited as the writer of the music in the songs.
Yeah, so I've got a list here of the richest drummers in the world. So I'm seeing if in that description he says actually, it's also his money from that, which it doesn't.
Shall we get to the truth? Because this has already gone on way longer than I anticipated.
Yeah, but just to say, I love that you've got the drummer of the band whose song you're using, and still in this movie, Roxanne is performed by Spearhead, not the Police. Yeah, or at least on the soundtrack it is.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me the soundtrack's a big part of this because obviously they recorded a special song. Is it Less Than Jake? I'm a Dude, She's a Dude with Kel singing, which is what's over the credits.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
That's really fun. That's nowhere in the trivia. I don't know how that came together. I wish the trivia was better, Chris. I really do. I have so many questions about how this movie came together, and I'll never have the answers.
All I Want by R&B group 702 was like the soundtrack song. That's the song that got released with the logo on and stuff.
Is that the one they danced to in the asylum?
I don't know.
Okay.
I thought it might be the ballad that's played during the Keenan and Monique stuff, but
it could be. It genuinely could. I have no idea. But yeah, carry
on. Dan, super quick game. Who do you think is the richest drummer in the world?
Richest drummer
according to this article.
So I mean, Ringo will have done well because he's still Ringo Starr. But if I was guessing, for me, it's between. It's I always forget the guy's name. The Red Hot Chili Peppers drummer. I think he's done very well because he's done a lot of stuff outside of that. So it's either Dave Grohl, Chad Smith, or Ringo.
So Chad Smith is 12.
Well done. Is only 12. Wow.
Yeah. Well done for thinking of Dave Grohl because I wouldn't have thought of Dave Grohl, but obviously he absolutely counts. Dave Grohl is 4th.
Wow.
And then the top 3 is Lars Ulrich, obviously from Metallica, Larry Mullen Jr. from U2, and then Ringo Starr is number 1.
Ringo. Yeah, that makes sense.
Which is crazy because I think U2 are, in terms of that sort of who writes the songs, I think U2 are pretty famous for, regardless of who does what, they credit all 4 of them.
Right, which means a bigger paycheck.
So it's nuts to think that Ringo Starr is higher than him.
I think that says more about how much the Beatles made and continue to make over time than it does about how much of a percentage Ringo got. Oh, actually, Oh, thank you for reminding me. Very quickly, Chris, we did the Avatar episode. We talked about Matt Damon turning down one of the largest amounts of money anyone ever will turn down for a movie, because the movie made 2.9 billion is the current thing after the re-release this year, and he would have had 10% of that. What we neglected to question, and we do not know the answer to this, is whether that is 10% of the gross or 10% of the net. That never occurred to us, Chris. We just did 10% of 2.9 billion. But it wouldn't have been 10% of 2.9 billion. It would have probably been, 10% of whatever the net profit was. And Hollywood accounting is weird, where they can claim a movie made no money. Some actors still are owed residuals from movies like Star Wars, and Fox claim it didn't make any money.
Yeah, but the figure that gets banded around is 250, 270 million. So other people have done that maths as well. Like
yes, they have. But what I'm saying is we don't know how much it would have been, because we don't know if it was gross or net. No one's ever confirmed, and that changes the figure significantly, because it puts the power to calculate what net is in the studio. So the studio can claim that it was less profitable than it was by saying they spent more on marketing. The movie cost us 400 million to make, and then we spent another 500 million on marketing. So actually, the movie only made he still would have made an absolute shit ton of money no matter what, because the movie was so profitable. But I'm just saying, any estimates we gave will have been dependent on that. So apologies if we've misled there, because that is someone pointed that out, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a really good point. We didn't think of that.
That's fair.
So, yeah.
That's fair.
Just
very quickly as well, while we're doing caveats, just very quickly as well, Larry Mullen Jr., second richest drummer in the world according to this article, composed the theme tune to Mission Impossible. So I imagine that got him a fair bit as well.
Wait. The original? Like in
creating the theme tune to Mission Impossible in 1996 alongside Adam Clayton, so must be the movie then, I guess.
Right, yeah.
No, yeah. Oh, so he didn't create the...
No, because that was on the original. That was in the original show, right?
Yeah.
That
anyway, we've not talked about Good Burger for about 20 minutes, so...
So if we were going to wrap this up in like overall thoughts, I can't pretend that I haven't got like some nostalgia for this film. Like Chris sort of like at the beginning of this podcast was like, I've got all this nostalgia. Dan, give us the non-biased view? And what I should have said at the time is, I don't think we're getting a non-biased view on this podcast, because I think both of us have fond memories of watching this as kids. But there are plenty of movies we've watched for this podcast that we enjoyed as kids, that as adults we have gone, no thank you. Dumb and Dumber is the cleanest example, because it's the closest to this, because it is just, it's a dumb comedy from the 90s, right? That just doesn't work now, right? Different audiences they were aimed at, but it's a dumb comedy from the 90s that does not function anymore. I think there's still a really charming, fun film in this. Experience will vary, like, depending on your personal tastes and preferences. But I think on the whole, on balance, this was a really, really good time, and I'm glad I rewatched it, and I would recommend anybody that might be interested in this or has any nostalgia for that era of Nickelodeon or Kenan and Kel as performers should absolutely dig this out if you can access it. I think it's a ton of fun. I think the cast are obviously having a lot of fun. It was very creatively made. They a surprising amount of like effort and money clearly went into set design in this film, which is pretty impressive. So yeah, I big thumbs up. I still want the answers to my questions. So Brian, if you're listening, get back to us. But in conclusion, for me overall, I think this is a really fun, charming little film, I'm glad that I still remember it. I will still think of it fondly, having rewatched it as an adult.
I still adore this film. I have so much nostalgia for this film. Mm-hmm. I would happily sit down and watch this next week if someone wanted to. No one will want to, but still. I think it has a fair amount of charm, but I think the key thing is, you take away all of that, and much like Last Action Hero, I think if I put this movie on, having never seen it, it is just the right level of batshit crazy and attempting to have heart, have a story, be about friendship, that I'd have gone along for the ride and enjoyed this. I think, I enjoyed Last Action Hero a lot more than Dan, because for me, having never seen it, not particularly... I didn't go into Last Action Hero going, this is a good film, and then discover it's flawed. I went into Last Action Hero going, I don't know what this is. And I honestly think if I'd have gone into Good Burger, not knowing what it was, and it's similar for like the Goofy movie as well, which obviously does hold up, and Dan really enjoyed as well. But I'm pretty sure if I went into Good Burger not knowing what it is, Ed showering with his uniform on, the fast pace of the jokes, the way they put so much heart into Ed's character and make the movie about that, unapologetically good, the Ed character. I absolutely would have got swept up, I think, and regardless of nostalgia or anything like that, I still would have enjoyed this movie. And I just think it's we've not said these words, but I thought it a lot watching this. This is a 90-minute live action cartoon. It feels like a cartoon that's been made into live action, and I think there is a market for that. There is sometimes a need to sit back and watch a cartoon. And if you're in any way nostalgic for Nickelodeon, Kenan and Kel, if you're a joke person, or if that appeals to you, the notion of a live action kids cartoon appeals to you, then I think there's definitely something in this movie. It's not soulless at all. It's a lot of the humour still holds up. And yeah, I would also absolutely say I had a great time watching it and recommend.
Very good. So, Chris, is it time?
Let's triv it up!
I'm going to give you some trivia. So there's the little bit of the podcast where we do some triv related to the movie. Very quickly, I will burn through these because we talked too long. Based on the skit Good Burger from the All That series, we already talked about that, but the All That series aired in 1994. This was a recurring sketch on that show. And I tried to find out why they selected this, of all things, to sort of turn into the movie. But I remember as a kid being very confused because I didn't realize it had been based on a sketch when I first saw it. And then years later, they finally started showing all that in the UK. But how they did it was they broke it up into its component sketches and would randomly air the sketches.
Blew my mind apart. Do you remember when you saw that for the first time? I remember seeing a Good Burger sketch for the first time on Nickelodeon randomly one day at my nan's. Because I don't think we had Sky at that point. And it blew my mind apart. And there's no listing for it. I couldn't find out what I was watching. It was crazy.
Yeah. It was years and years and years later that I saw it, I think. And it was like when we finally had Sky watching Nickelodeon, between the shows, they did a 3-minute sketch to make up the time, I guess, because maybe the episode fell short or they didn't have the ad space. I'm not sure, but yeah, they would just start airing them, and it blew my mind too. Very, very impressed. I was like, what is happening? But yeah, very good. Let's see. We're gonna skip that one because we already covered it. Already covered that too. Okay, so this one's good. So Manny's El Loco restaurant was the filming location of the Good Burger. It's in Covina. Oh yeah, Covina, which is just outside of LA. Just outside of the Hollywood, as it were. Sadly, this restaurant closed during the pandemic, but it was reopened recently. Different owner, and has been renamed Peter's El Loco. It's still there though. And it is, of course, across the road from something called the Samantha Courtyard Shopping Centre, which is a big mall that exists across the road and was used, or the corner of it was used as the filming location for the Mondo Burger restaurant, with obviously all the extra details sort of added to the facade for the film, such as the burger and fries that are on the roof, and all that stuff. The property apparently is 3.5 acres wide. But it is genuinely across the road from Manny's El Loco. So yeah. In various shots, Good Burger is shown to be across the street from a Blockbuster Video. Viacom, the parent company of Nickelodeon and Paramount, acquired Blockbuster Video and Paramount 3 years earlier. So they're all one big happy family.
There you go.
The theatrical trailer featured a scene that didn't make it into the film. It featured a Good Burger customer saying, "Just give me a good shake," and Ed reaching over the counter and shaking him. I rewatched the reunion sketch that they did on one of the Jimmys. Was it Jimmy Fallon? Jimmy Kimmel? I can't remember. Jimmy Fallon, I think. They did a reunion sketch a couple of years ago, where Kel, reprised his role as Ed, and Keenan shows up, and they used that joke, which is really weird because it's a joke that didn't make it into the movie, but it was good enough for one of the Jimmies. Anyway, apparently in the Good Burger sketches, one of Ed's catchphrases was "That'll be $8," which he just used to say after almost everything. Not used in the movie at all, which is a bit strange. I'm assuming there was maybe a line that was cut of some sort. Sinbad's character, Mr. Wheat, is named after writer-producer Dan Schneider's high school math teacher, Gough Wheat. So yeah, that's... Sure. As per Dexter's calculations, $5 an hour, 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, it would have taken him 13 weeks to pay off the $1,900 repair bill. He doesn't finish the math. So someone else has done it for us and put it in the trivia, which is nice. I will say, though, right, that line bothers me separately. 6 hours a day? I'm pretty sure we see Kel go in there as Ed first thing in the morning because, he's woken up by his alarm, he showers, he runs out, it's daytime, it's clearly the morning. They're still there at the close when Mondo Burger is opening. How long was that shift? Because that weren't 6 hours.
Yeah, but there's a notion that, Ed's just always there.
But they're all there. They're all there when Ed gets there. They're all there when they leave.
I want to know what's going on with Ed. Do we think Ed's just left school? Is he still living with his parents? Because he's not affording that house on his own on that wage. And Ed's just basically a little bit older, and that's why he's not at school or whatever?
That's a good question. That must be it. He's just left school. That's my assumption.
Yeah.
So there are at least two employees at Good Burger whose names we never learn, nor do we ever hear them speak. There's just two extras that run around the set in the costume that we never actually hear or see from. That's quite strange. The Coca-Cola fountain at the Good Burger restaurant has 5 fountains, but for some reason only 2 beverages. It has Coca-Cola on either end, and then 3 Diet Cokes in the middle.
That's not even 2 beverages. That's 2 variations of one beverage, isn't it?
Yeah, right. Which is strange, because I'm pretty sure in the 90s, Coke already had, some of their other brands like Sprite and Fanta. So, shrug.
That's crazy.
Yeah, who knew? Who knows? So, the names of Kurt's 2 lackeys, who are never mentioned in the movie, are Troy and Griffin. That's in the credits, but never said in the movie. So there you go. Thumbs up, whoever noticed that. So I quite like this one. If you look at the menu, even though no one has ever seen eating anything other than a good burger and good fries, the menu is surprisingly varied. It shows they also sell something called good chunks, good chickwitches, good weenies, good tacos, good chili, and then finally, good pickles. The beverage selection includes Coca-Cola products, good shakes, and good coffee. The dessert menu consists of a good cookie and a good pie. Now, all of that food that's on the menu is never seen in the movie. Literally never.
Yeah. The fact that they're serving tacos is crazy. Let's be honest.
Yeah, right. And I mean, there's a part of me that thinks, it clearly is a Mexican restaurant the rest of the time. Maybe that's just a nod to the fact that storefront is that, but I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, to promote the film, there was a good burger, good premiere, good sweepstakes, which is a prize thing run on Nickelodeon where the 4 grand prize winners won tickets to the film's premiere, $1,000, and a chance to meet Keenan and Kel at the premiere. The first 100 place prize winners also got a fabric hat with dreadlocks attached, so they could wear it and resemble Ed. There were 500 third place winners that won an exclusive copy of the film's soundtrack. I want the hat with the dreadlocks attached, if I'm being honest.
For sure. Yeah.
In 1998, Schneider wrote a script for A Good Burger to Go, a sequel to the original film that had Ed and Dexter uncovering a scandal when a British conglomerate buys the Good Burger restaurant. Paramount turned down the script for unknown reasons, and Steve Holland was hired to turn the script into a paperback novel, which was then released. So if you wish to know what the plot of Good Burger 2 Go was, you can buy the book. I've had a look. You can still get it online. At some point, I may acquire a copy.
Yeah, you have to get it second hand, though, don't you? Like, it's really hard to get on, like, Amazon and stuff.
It didn't look like it would be that hard to get when I glanced last night, but I must admit, when I was doing the trivia, I was very sleepy, and I didn't take an inordinate amount of time double checking that was going to be easy to get. It didn't seem.
Oh no, you can buy it. It's £20 though for like a used version. So
yeah, right.
Fairly rare.
Yeah. Paperback, Good Burger 2 Go. Yeah, 1887. That is a bit pricey.
I probably should do it though, shouldn't I?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious to know what the story is, but especially knowing it was based on a script for the sequel that never got made.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Chris, it's everyone's favourite time. It's our world famous segment, Chris. It's Cars Exist. For those who don't know, when we were doing trivia in early days of this podcast, we noticed that every week someone would just be like, the lead character of this movie drives a Ford such a thing, and we were like, why is that trivia? Just Cars Exist. But since then, it's become my favourite part of the podcast.
I feel like we've explained more of the podcast than we usually do. Do you think the Good Burger episode is getting a lot of new ears on this podcast?
No, I just feel like today it's just been on my mind that this is like any episode of this podcast could be someone's first, and we're not very good at explaining what we're doing. So I feel like I'm just a bit more conscious of it this week. But that's just an accident, not really. Not design. I didn't think Good Burger was going to be the episode we gain a lot of new listeners. But yes, I have definitely made a point of that this week, but it was just on my mind. So let's start, Chris, by just getting a couple of the vehicles out of the way that are irrelevant. Then we got an actual bit of triv relating to the cars this week. So Kurt drives a 1997 GMC Yukon SLT. Mr. Wheat's car, the one that is trashed twice in the movie, is a 1993 Infiniti J30 Y32, which is a nice car. Dexter's mom's car, the car that Dexter crashes right at the beginning of the movie. Noticed I called her his mom because, she's an American lady. I'm going to call her his mom.
Yeah.
Be weird to call her his mum. That's a British thing. Anyway, the car she drives, but we never see her, but the car she drives that gets trashed at the beginning of the movie, and is probably the best car in the movie. Anyway, it's a 1995 Nissan 300 ZX 2+2. I'm assuming that's a four-wheel drive or the number of doors. I'm not sure what that refers to, but anyway, the Z32. It's a good car. So, Chris, the real trivia here is what's going on with the Burgermobile.
I mean, it has to be, doesn't it? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So the Burgermobile itself was a 1976 AMC Pacer. I suspect chose because, quite frankly, like the other cars you might have noticed were pretty recent in the grand scheme of things. Movie was probably shot 96, early 97. And, we've got a 97 car, a 93 car, and a 95 car. So they're all, within a few years of the release of this movie. And how are all these people affording brand new cars? But anyway, the Burgermobile, though, was this 1976 Pacer, I presume intentionally designed that way to be like a crappy old car that's probably been at that restaurant for 100 years, right? Sadly, though, when the movie finished, it ended up in like a lot somewhere, and it just rotted and rusted and was in awful shape. Now, I saw pictures of it online. It was very upsetting. But in 2019, it was purchased by a drive-in owner called Mike Johnson for $6,000. He then spent $25,000, Chris, to have the car restored, and it is now on display at his High Point Drive-In in St. Louis, Missouri.
What? Wow.
That's such an enormous amount of money. Now, I've seen the pictures of what it looked like in its bad shape, and I've seen what it looks like after being restored. Undeniably, an extraordinary job has been done to make that, function and like look good and look like a car again, because it was in very bad shape. But do you think that's brought in enough? Like, because presumably his thinking is stick that on display at my drive-in, more customers, more promotion. And there are several articles written about the car being restored when he did it. But do you think that long term was a good investment? I'm not sure. I love him for it. But spending essentially $31,000 to acquire and repair that car.
Yeah, it is, and like, you know, I'm on it now. Like, it is, like you say, it's a good restoration for sure.
Do you have the picture of what it looked like sat in that lot?
Yeah, well, yeah, from an article that's like you could buy it for $10,000.
Yeah, he eventually. I think he must have negotiated. I saw that too. He must have negotiated it down to $6,000.
Given, I don't really know why they kept was the burger on because they've removed in that picture. They've removed the top. They've removed the lights from the side. Why did they keep the burger on? Like, why not? Yeah.
Yeah, I thought about that. I was thinking maybe it had just fallen off over the years because it wasn't attached very securely. That was my guess, but I did wonder the same thing.
But I just think, like, that's crazy, isn't it? Like, because in answer to your question, do I think, you know, it's brought in enough people? No, probably not. But I can only assume they had the money. They had the money. Like, I don't think you do that as an investment. Surely that's the kind of thing where, you know, you don't.
That's love of the craft.
Yeah. So there's nothing. Oh, that's a shame. There's not like a documentary about it on YouTube or anything. Oh no, maybe. Hold on. Oh, there is. Yeah. No, that's crazy, man. I can only assume they had the money.
Yeah. That's So I found that quite interesting. But that concludes. I don't have anything less more to comment on that, other than that I feel like that guy, maybe if his goal was to attract more customers, I'm just not sure that would pay for itself in the end. But other than that, that is the end of Cars Exist, and indeed the trivia, Chris.
Meow. Sorry, so there's a video of a guy travelling around St. Louis who goes to look at that car. So
that's fun.
Part of it. And they have a little bit. It looks like they have a little thing about it. So, yeah.
Maybe I will watch that video, Chris, after this podcast.
Yeah, that's crazy. But you know, this has been fun, Dan. But I'm very intrigued, Dan, because obviously for the first time in quite a while, we've done 3 seasons in a row. The middle season was a Harry Potter special, but we've done a fair old bit of Rewind reviews. And we got a bit of, from our perspective, we've got a slight break now with Cora.
10 weeks.
10 weeks, although timing-wise for us, we might try and do some doubling up of some recordings, so it might be a bit sooner. The exciting question, Dan, is, you know, we're starting afresh, baby. We're having more of a break than we have recently. We're, you know, you could take us in any different direction here. Where are we going, my friend, for the first episode back for season 6 of Rewind Reviews?
This is a really hard choice, Chris, for a few reasons. There's that temptation to be like, well...
actually, sorry, before, because I think we should wrap this up. Did we do it, Dan? Was it all bangers at the end?
Yeah, why? Yeah.
I think it was. I think for sure it was.
Yeah, I think this movie's great. I couldn't recommend it to absolutely everyone, but I really enjoy it and enjoyed it, and I'm glad that was the case. I was relieved when he picked up the clock and he went, "Whoa, a clock!" I was relieved immediately. I was like, "Okay, I've laughed already. That's a really good sign." Because I think the worst case scenario was that I found like the characters kind of charming, maybe in the world kind of charming, but it just wasn't funny to me anymore as an adult. Because one thing I did remember is that the movie was quite a joke machine. So worst case scenario was that it wasn't funny. As long as it managed that, any other criticisms I had would have been a bit, you could hand wave away with, it's just a silly kids film or whatever. And it doesn't really matter as long as it's funny. So yeah, that was it. And it turned out, you know, to be charming and likable in other ways. But yes, I agree. I'm assuming you feel the same way.
Yeah, for sure.
So moving on, Chris, is a tricky one now, because we're in a weird situation. Because how do we go on from here with the first episode of a new season? The old tradition was to choose a bad movie. We don't do that tradition anymore. But we've just done all bangers. So do I take a risk now? Can I take a risk now on a movie that might not be good?
I think beginning of season 6, you can do whatever you want, man. You want to take a risk, you can take a risk.
Well, exactly. So what occurred to me was that actually we've already talked about the perfect movie to do for the next series, to open the next series, because it is a movie we both are not sure about, that we both loved very dearly, but suspiciously have neither seen since. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about Rugrats, baby. Let's do it.
I forgot that we had this Rugrats discussion. Yes, yeah.
Because we both saw the Rugrats movie as kids, loved it, absolutely loved it, but neither of us have watched that movie in our adult life, as far as I'm aware. Yeah. I have absolutely no idea if it's even watchable, Chris. It could be utter drivel, and that's an exciting thought. This might be one of the biggest gaps we've had. We've done a movie. I'm having a skim. Is there a movie we watched where I hadn't seen it since original release? That might be. I'm looking at the list. I don't think so, though. Most of these movies, maybe Girl Next Door.
No, but I'd seen that since. I've seen that a couple of times.
I see. Mouse Hunt for me, but not for you, I suspect.
No, not for me.
So yeah, I don't think we've had this, Chris. Neither of us have seen this movie probably since the year it came out, or maybe the year after if we rented it on DVD or VHS. But I don't think.
Yeah, so it came out in the States in 1998. So let's be generous and say 2000. We haven't seen this film for over 22 years.
Right.
That's great. Yeah, man.
So I can't think of a better movie to do as the opener than a movie where it could be amazing, it could be awful. So I'm calling it now. We're doing Rugrats.
Yeah, great choice. I'm on board.
Yeah. So we won't be doing that for a little while, as Chris already hinted. On the if you're on the Patreon, the feed is about to start getting analyzing Avatar episodes again, starting next week. We're going to be doing we're finally starting Legend of Korra, which I'm very excited about. It'd be nice to get a break from doing movies too, because we've been doing them for as Chris pointed out, we've just done essentially 3 series of movies back to back, 33 movies reviewed for 33 weeks. It's a lot. So I'm a little excited about getting away from that, just to have a little break. But I'm excited to come back next year and do not next year. Well, it will be next year. We're recording this in late 2022, but I guess you guys are hearing this early 2023. But we're coming back a little bit later in the year, sort of 10-ish weeks from now. In fact, I can get the date. But if you're on the Patreon and you've got the RSS feed for this, the feed will start to get Korra episodes starting next week. If you're listening to this on Spotify or iTunes or any of those sort of places where you get your podcasts, like Overcast or the Podcatcher or whatever it's called, there's a bunch of those apps. You will be equally, you'll get the epic Korra next week. But if you want to hear Korra now, you can do so by heading over to the Patreon and paying as little as $1 a month. That gives you access to our podcasts a week early. We also have our main podcast, Nothing But Static, which is available, where we review TV, movies, sometimes movies, but usually TV related ones or ones that have been released on streaming and other nonsense like that. That's also very fun. I think that's everything. Oh yeah, youtube.com/nothingButStaticUK. And if I didn't already mention it, our Patreon is patreon.com/nothingButStatic. If you want to contact us, you can't do so over Twitter at present, unless I find out that the Brian, what's his face, the director of this movie, Brian Robbins is on Twitter, in which case I'll be returning to Twitter briefly to question him. I wish to know. I want to know why she's there. But yeah,
it's
so
a fair question. It's an important question. I can see. I want you, Dan. The reality is, even if which we're not going to, but even if we manage to record 2 Korras a week, which we're not going to, but even if we did do that, right, you've still got 5 weeks. Let's say, bare minimum, you've got a month to try and find this out before we do the next Rewind reviews. Mm-hmm. I've got every faith in you, man. I think it's a mission that you should absolutely take on.
It begins today. I want to know.
Yeah.
I want to know. So why was Linda Cardellini's character in the restaurant? That's the main one. I do also want to know what the hell happened with Carmen Electra, but I suspect that one might be a little bit harder to obtain because, quite frankly, I don't think anyone's going to want to talk about that. But because that seems like maybe not a good thing. So yeah, we'll hopefully we'll come back to that. I've just looked it up. It's the 2nd of May. Will be the next episode of Rewind Reviews. So yeah, I'm very excited to do it. Thank you all very much for listening and sticking with us. It's been a weird year for this. So yeah, we're very grateful for everyone who's been listening. I think that's everything. I'm trying to think if I've missed anything. But I think that's all. So yeah, thank you all for sticking around, and we'll see you in 10 weeks' time on the 2nd of May for Rugrats. And I'm going to hand it over to Chris, who ends this.
I'm Chris Billingham.
I'm Dan Doolan.
And this review has been Rewound.